So, which is unfortunate to have that attitude for many reasons. For one thing, that's a very quick and cheap excuse. There's a famous story that a report that is in the Bible. It talks about how some of the Jews were witnesses one day when Jesus raised a man from the dead. A man who'd been dead for 4 days, he said, "Get up," and the man came out of his tomb. And it says some of the Jews who stood there and watched, what did they do? Did they say, "It's a miracle. The man was dead, now he's alive. This is a true prophet"? Some of the Jews said, no, it's the devil that did that raised him up. Now, this story is rehearsed very often in churches, and people cry big tears over that. They say, "Oh, if I'd been there, I wouldn't be so stupid as the Jew who would say that. I mean, a miracle, a dead man gets up. How could I say it was the devil?" But they start to resemble those kinds of people if in 3 minutes you show them enough that all they can say is, "Oh, the devil did it." It's too much. Maybe the devil did, but that's a very quick decision to make. It's what the Meccans used to say, some of them. They said the devil brought him that. But just as with every other suggestion made, the Qur'an gives an answer. It says in one verse in particular, it says, "Do they say this came from Satan? Remind them of this." And it gives an argument in reply to that. There are many arguments in reply to that suggestion. For one thing, the Qur'an tells us that it says when you read this book, you're supposed to be in the habit, before you read this book, to say, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim," which means I take refuge in Allah from Satan, the rejected. Is this how Satan writes a book? He tells you, before you read my book, ask God to save you from me. That's very, very tricky. A man could write something like that, but can Satan do that? Can Satan put that in his book? Would God allow Satan to do that? Some people really show where they have a split mind on this. They'll tell you yes. On the other hand, these are the same people who will tell you that the devil is he's just that much less than God. Whatever God can do, probably the devil can do it too. Well, that's the attitude of somebody who says this book is so surprising, no matter how good it is, the devil could do it. Muslims don't have that attitude. Satan may have his abilities, but they're a long ways separated from the abilities of Allah. It's as I say, it's a cheap and quick excuse. It should also bring us back to think about that verse I mentioned before. Even the devil should contradict himself when he writes. And the Qur'an says, if it didn't come from Allah, you should find some contradictions in this book. There's another attack sometimes made, or another direction that people come from. They may tell you that, well, your prophet was a liar and he was deceived. That is, he fooled himself. There's a name for that in psychology. They call it mythomania. It means you tell lies and then you believe them. You say that's what he was. You see, he told lies, but then he believed his own lies. The problem with that idea is that mythomania cannot deal with facts. See, the Qur'an talks about facts, things you can go and look and see that they're true. The mythomaniac can't do that. Facts are a problem for him. The psychologist, the psychiatrist, tries to treat a man by confronting him with facts. If a man is mentally ill and he says, I'm the King of England, the psychologist doesn't say to him, you are crazy, you're not the King of England. He doesn't say that. He confronts him with facts. He says, you say you're the King of England? Tell me, where is the Queen today? Who is your Prime Minister? Bring me the army. Or something like that. So the man has trouble trying to deal with this. He has to make excuses. The Queen, she's visiting her mother. My Prime Minister, he resigned. He has to make excuses because the facts give him trouble. And this is how he's cured. If you keep putting enough facts in front of him, finally he faces the reality and realizes, I've been deluded. That's the way the Qur'an approaches everyone who reads it. There's an ayah which says, in these words there is a healing. Now this is part of the meaning of that. It's therapy. It heals crazy people. By telling them, you think this, you think that? Well, don't forget this. Have you considered such and such? That's the repeated kind of attitude throughout the Qur'an. It's saying, oh man, do you say so and so, but what about such and such? Oh man, have you said so and so, but didn't you also say this? How can you try that when you know this? It's always putting the facts in front of you, pushing your nose into what is relevant, what matters. So it heals you of your delusions. That's at least one aspect of the meaning of that verse. Maybe that has not always been as appreciated as it should be. There are, till now, some people who will tell you that the meaning of this verse is that there's medicine in the words of the Qur'an. Maybe. I know of a man who was quite ill, and so somebody took a page from the Qur'an and they poured water on it and they washed all the words off and they put the ink in a glass and they said, you drink this. It will heal you. Well, maybe. That would be one understanding of those words. I personally don't think so, but maybe. But certainly, people are healed of their craziness by the words of the Qur'an. It has, this type of thing, confronting people with the facts, has come to the attention of a lot of non-Muslims. In fact, you'll find an interesting reference in the New Catholic Encyclopedia. Now, here is the Catholic Church that has been around for so many centuries. The Qur'an is a problem for them. It says it's a revelation. So they study it. They would love to find proof that it isn't. They would love to find an explanation for what is it really, but they can't. At least the Catholic Church has been honest in its scholarship. They don't take the first quick excuse. In the New Catholic Encyclopedia, in the article on the subject of Qur'an, the Church says that over the centuries, many theories have been offered as to the origin of the Qur'an. And in their own words, they say, today, no sensible man accepts any of these theories. This leaves the Christian in some difficulty. See, listen carefully to what they're saying. They're saying for somebody who says the Qur'an came from here, it came from there, they have this idea, this theory. The Church says in 14 centuries, we still haven't heard a sensible idea. There is no sensible man that believes any of these suggestions as to the origin of the Qur'an. That's why they say it leaves the Christian in some difficulty. It leaves him in a lot of difficulty. He'd like to explain it, but he hasn't been able to yet. So that's maybe a second point I'd suggest, that when you meet someone who says, oh, the Qur'an, it came from here or there, they say, I can explain it. I have an idea where it came from. Tell him, go talk to the Catholic Church. They'd love to hear from you. They're waiting for an explanation. If you've got it, they might buy it from you. Because at least they've been honest enough to admit that in 14 centuries, they haven't found one yet. So it is not an easy thing to dismiss. Other groups of people have been a lot less honest than that. They'll quickly tell you, oh, the Qur'an, it came from here, it came from there, without examining that to see, is that thing at all possible, or can you explode it, push that away? In fact, most recently, the leading intellectual in the Catholic Church, Hans Kung is his name. He's been around for a lot of years, and he's highly respected in the Church, sort of the intellect of the Church today. Recently, after studying the Qur'an, he gave his opinion. He said, God has spoken to man through the man Muhammad. Now, that's his conclusion as the leading intellect in the Catholic Church. I don't think the Pope agrees with him. But this is what the leading intellect of the Church says. Because he's facing the reality that it is not easily pushed aside. That in fact, God said these words. So as I say, if somebody has a better idea, they should go and talk to the Church about it. Or they should find a new possibility. But I think that we have exhausted the possibilities. If the book is not a revelation, then it is a deception. And if it is a deception, what is its origin? And where